Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Thursday, April 24th, and I am your host, Josh Newberg, and this show is brought to you by Teamworks Intelligence. Every player, every metric, every advantage. All right, we are here to talk some recruiting, and we got a lot of major developments to talk about, especially when it comes to number one offensive tackle, Jackson Cantwell. He made a huge announcement overnight. We're going to talk about it today with Steve Wiltfong. Let's bring him in. There he is, the great Steve Wiltfong. Are you ready to talk some Georgia? Because it looks like the Dogs are in position to land another top three class. We got to talk about what happened last night. Jackson Cantwell announces two things. One, he's going to take an official visit to Georgia, and he has moved back his commitment date. Steve Wiltfong, what does it all mean?
Well, I like the way it's setting up for Georgia. In the Kirby Smart era, the Bulldogs have finished with a top three recruiting class every time. They're aiming to do it for a 10th straight cycle. They currently sit at number 20, but they have the blue chippers on the board to make a push for the top three, to make a run at potentially the number one class in the land. And that starts with five-star Jackson Cantwell, the number one player in the country per the On3 industry from Nixa, Missouri. He's taking an official visit to Oregon this weekend for the Ducks spring game. There had been a lot of buzz recently about Miami and the visit he had with the Hurricanes this spring. He visited Miami during the fall. Miami making a major move, but talking with Jackson, talking with several sources regarding the recruitment. Georgia has come back in a big way. And what I mean by come back is I think that Georgia led for the majority of Jackson's process. And if this was an old school pre-NIL recruitment, the Bulldogs would have been extremely hard to beat. His relationship with Stacy Searles, Georgia's offensive line coach, is second to none at that position. He's been to Athens several times. He loves the way they develop offensive linemen, loves the pedigree of the program, the big games they play in, the championship contender year in and year out, the relationship with Kirby Smart, the standard, the way they get the best out of their players, the way they compete in practice. Everything about that with Georgia checked all the boxes. But when you're the number one player in the country, there are other boxes that are available to you. And I think when you look at Miami, you look at Oregon, they got a lot of on-field success they can point to, and they got a lot of opportunity that they can point to off the field. And again, I'm told that Georgia has come back in a big way in that regard. And I like the way that it is starting to pick up for Georgia. My On3 RPM reflects that. They got to get through this Oregon visit. Miami's not going to go away. Ohio State's still pushing. But Georgia's the place that I think Jackson Cantwell has always seen himself, a place with like-minded people in a culture and program that he really could see himself thriving. He's going to go back to Georgia one more time for a visit. Then he's going to announce his college decision a few days later. I like the way it's lining up for the Bulldogs. But as we all know, particularly in the new era of recruiting, things can quickly change. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. You'll want to stay locked into On3. You want to hit like and subscribe to this channel so you're up to date on the latest news with Jackson Cantwell and the other five stars.
Steve, less than 3 weeks ago, Jackson Cantwell told you, what do I need to take more official visits for? I've seen it all. I'm ready to decide. He set that decision date for April 30th. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, he has scheduled two more official visits, one to Oregon this week,
well,
then
one
Georgia.
More official and then one more unofficial. So if he picks Georgia, that official's still in his back pocket for June to come help recruit later.
Since then, he's moved his commitment date from April 30th, which was going to be 2 days after that Oregon visit ended, to now it's going to be on May 13th. So now that Oregon visit, which was supposed to be right before his commitment, is going to be in the rearview mirror compared to where Georgia sits. So I say all that to ask you, what do you think happened behind the scenes from him going from, I don't need to take any more visits, I got it, I need to just decide, to scheduling two more visits and pushing back his commitment date about 2 weeks?
Well, anytime that you allow the door to stay open and you're having dialogue with the likes of Kirby Smart, Mario Cristobal, Dan Lanning, Ryan Day, those programs, these guys didn't get those jobs by accident. And so as long as you're still having dialogue, these coaches and staffs can say compelling things to get you to get back in the game and get back into your recruitment. And so, look, you and I, we've been covering recruiting for a couple decades. These prospects, they're going through it for the first time. So when you think you know something, things change, and new information is presented to you, whether it's, opportunities away from the football program or games played in the fall or coaching changes or philosophies or commitments or guys rising on the depth chart or in a new offer that you didn't have. Information changes all the time. And so for me, that's why these recruitments are fluid and these decisions are hard. Again, when you are having these conversations with guys like Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning and Ryan Day and Mario Cristobal, they are so buttoned up in their message for why you should come play for them and highlight all the strengths of their program. It sounds pretty good for all four places. And so it's hard. I think that Jackson Cantwell is as genuine a recruit as there is in this class. And so when he says something, he means it. But these coaches are going to continue to be relentless, talking to you, talking to your family, talking to your representation. And look, he wanted to get back out to Oregon because he only been there once as a recruit and get back out there, see a spring practice. Maybe I needed to, after talking to Dan Lanning and company, maybe I do need to come back and see some things that I didn't necessarily see the first time. And now talking to Kirby Smart, Georgia, Coach Cyril's again. You know what? I do need to get back to Athens. I haven't been there in a while. I have been to Michigan, Ohio State, and Miami this spring. I'm going to Oregon, but I haven't been to Georgia in a while. I need to get back to Georgia because he also did visit Missouri in the spring. So he will have now hit all his favorites one more time this calendar year, which he hadn't done. Jackson told me last night, I still don't know where I'm going to go. So that means that even though I have a prediction in for Georgia, it's not done. And so the Bulldogs got to get it to the finish line. And these other programs, with how coveted Jackson is, the intangibles he brings along with the elite tangibles. He's 6'7", 305 pounds. He's an explosive player that can bend. He's powerful. He plays with an intensity and aggressive and a motor. He's the top shot put and discus thrower in the country, just an explosive player that's also super smart, super long, could play multiple positions at the point of attack, but certainly be that left tackle long term. These coaches aren't going to go away.
Yeah, and you put your prediction in. You kind of just threw that in, but about 30 minutes before we about 30 minutes before we sat down, you dropped a prediction for Jackson Cantwell to Georgia, which he also addressed. I mean, he acknowledged I don't know if you saw this, but we'll throw the tweet up there. He acknowledged what you said, and I kind of find that interesting because you're picking Georgia for him. A lot of recruits kind of just ignore that. He decided to tweet it out there to his followers. So we will see what happens with Jackson Cantwell as he is off to Eugene in just a matter of about 24 hours here. So let's move on and talk.
Well, generally, like with these predictions, I told Jackson I was going to put in the prediction. I don't like to blindside these guys with picks and they catch it off guard. Now every once in a while that happens, but just wanted to let him know that prediction was going to go in, and he doesn't know where he's going to go, but he understands that there's a lot of interest in his recruitment because of who he is and what he's accomplished. And there's a lot of fans that are excited about him, and the On3 readers love reading about him. And, obviously he's going to be at Oregon this weekend, and our Ducks fans are going to be excited, and they're going to be out there for the spring game. And there's going to be fans that are pushing you to say hello to him and get him to go to Oregon. And that's all part of the pageantry and what makes this sport great and the intimacy of it. And then when he goes to Georgia, there'll be people floating around on campus and you won't miss him. He's 6'7", 305 pounds. Same way when he goes and visits Miami and they put him on the golf cart and they're riding around that beautiful lake in Coral Gables. He feels the love, but with that, comes some media coverage, and he's a pro. He understands that we have a job to do covering him and bringing information to all the interested readers about him. And so he knew I was going to put in that pick, but he also said, I don't know where I'm going to go. So Oregon, Miami, Georgia, obviously, Ohio State, I heard still swinging, still trying to make that final impression on Jackson Cantwell and get them to be part of their program.
Yeah, it's definitely a moving target because when you put that report out 2 weeks ago that he was not going to take any more visits and he was ready to decide, I thought it was Miami. I was pretty convinced it was Miami. Then he announces that he's going to take that Oregon visit and announced 2 days later. I was like, oh, it's Oregon. Of course it's Oregon. He's going to commit 2 days after his visit that he just said he wasn't going to take. And then he comes out with this Georgia visit and a new commitment date. And now I think it's Georgia. So you guys in the comment section, you're the real recruiting experts.
Several sources thought Miami, but even around Coral Gables, you talk to people and it's like, but he's still going to go visit Oregon, and then now he's going to go visit Georgia again. So he's working hard to get it down to one. He doesn't want to go through this process twice. And so he's doing the best he can to balance the information, the conversations he's having with these great coaches and these great opportunities. And he knows his hard work has put him in a fortunate position. And we'll know soon where he's going, May 13th.
Yeah, but I like your pick of Georgia. I think if you do the science, you connect these dots. Georgia came in and completely altered this recruitment, moved the commitment date, got a visit, like you said, unofficial. So he's still got that Georgia OV in his back pocket. Hey, once he's committed, he could use it during the summer. Sounds great. We'll see what happens. You guys, let us know in the comment section. What's your pick on Jackson Cantwell? Is it Georgia? Is it Miami? Are you still holding out hope for Ohio State or Oregon? Let us know. All right, we're moving on. We're going to talk about another five-star, Jared Curtis. He's the #1 quarterback in America. And it's down to 2 teams. We're talking Oregon. We're talking Georgia. And he's going to commit on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. For those that don't hablo español, Jared Curtis from Nashville, Tennessee. How do you read this one?
Dude, you love Cinco de Mayo. That's the first time I read it. You love saying Jared Curtis is going to commit on Cinco de Mayo, and he is indeed going to pull the trigger for either Georgia or Oregon. And my hunch is, based on the intel, is that I like where Georgia stands. I think the Bulldogs have rallied in this recruitment for Jared Curtis. He was obviously committed to Georgia at one point, decommitted during the fall. Oregon quickly grabbed momentum, and it's been a back and forth from the fall to now. But I think Georgia's still working to get it to the finish line. Oregon's still working hard. Regular dialogue with Will Stein, Ducks offensive coordinator. I expect him in Jared Curtis's home twice before he announces his college decision between Georgia and Oregon. And I know Jared loves that offense in Eugene. Sees how prolific the quarterback has been, from Bo Nix to Dylan Gabriel, the numbers they're putting up, the talent that they've surrounded him with, the status of Oregon's program right now, defending Big Ten champs, the relationship with the staff, the vibe he gets in Eugene. He could be a Duck. He loves Oregon, but I think as he nears his decision date, Georgia, the consistency of the program, the caliber of recruits in the O-line room and receiver room is exciting to him. The relationship with Mike Bobo, certainly Kirby Smart blows them away every time they come on campus. And then they got the proximity card in the equation for Jared Curtis. I like the way it's lining up for Georgia based on the conversations I'm having, but he's still having conversations with Georgia and Oregon. So that decision not finalized just yet. So we'll see what happens, but it's trending well for Georgia, in my opinion.
Yeah, I still like Oregon here for Jared Curtis, but my question to you is, do you think, because before it was going to be Cantwell makes his decision on April 30th, Jared Curtis goes a couple days later on May 5th. Now Jared Curtis is going to announce on May 5th, and Jackson Cantwell will go May 13th. Do you think Cantwell is going to pay attention? I mean, of course he's going to pay attention. Do you think Jared Curtis's commitment will play into Cantwell's decision?
Well, recruiting is a game of inches, so you never know how they're going to stack up in what's the inch that gets you over the top to win a recruitment. But Jackson Cantwell's doing his own thing. Certainly Jared Curtis he's aware of, and it would be to the opportunity to play with him at Oregon or Ohio State, certainly he would view as an exciting one, but he's looking for the best opportunity for himself on and off the field with whatever school he chooses. And I think Jackson Cantwell pushed his decision back based on the weekend that worked best for him to get back to Athens. It had nothing to do with Jared Curtis and his decision date. I'm in track and field. I'm trying to win a national championship in the shot put and discus. What does my schedule look like that's conducive for me to get back to Georgia one more time now before announcing? And then Jared Curtis has had this Cinco de Mayo commitment date on his radar for a while now. And look, there was talk of him going to Georgia for G-Day. He didn't go. There was talk of him going to Oregon for Oregon spring game. He's not going, from what I understand. So he's just having final conversations with his representation, his family, talking to these schools. And right now, I like where Georgia sits 2 weeks or so ahead of his decision.
Yeah. So we will see. And we're going to go live for Jared Curtis's announcement. Now, Jared Curtis is going to be announcing here, but we are going to be planning to go live. The only question is, what color sombrero am I going to be wearing?
How many sombreros do you own?
Well, I own one for every college football program in America.
I believe it.
All right. So we were talking about Georgia and their path to another top 3 class. Cantwell Curtis will go a long way in adding to that, but you also got a couple other targets on here. Talk about Mark Bowman and Tyler Atkinson and how important they could be to Georgia's potential top 3 class.
This year's spring transfer portal window is sponsored by Teamworks Intelligence. Their mission is simple: more hits, fewer misses, and player evaluation. In the transfer portal era, data-driven recruiting isn't just an advantage, it's essential. Teamworks Intelligence empowers your program to navigate the transfer portal with precision while simultaneously elevating your game, planning, and self-scouting capabilities. The same advanced analytics platform trusted by NFL teams to make multi-million-dollar personnel decisions is now available to elevate your college program's evaluation process. For athletic directors, general managers, and coaching staffs, Teamworks Intelligence delivers game-changing efficiency by streamlining the evaluation process. Instead of spending countless hours reviewing film and traveling to scout prospects, your team can assess more players with greater accuracy in less time. This means maximize recruiting efforts within new budget constraints, giving you the competitive edge needed to build championship caliber programs. Don't just survive the portal era, dominate it with Teamworks Intelligence, the new standard in player evaluation.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 more 5 stars. And when you kind of look at Georgia's recruiting board and you're like, who are the most coveted names in the country? You don't get far down the list before you hit Mark Bowman, top tight end, number 2 tight end in the country from Mater Dei, California. He's been to the last 2 G days at Georgia, and that was when he was a 2027 recruit initially. So he's been on Georgia's radar for quite some time, a guy that they've deemed a special prospect and one that they're all in on the land. Now they're battling Texas, USC, and Oregon trying to make a charge. Alabama's gotten them to campus a couple times, but this past visit to Georgia, getting to go to a spring practice, hear Kirby Smart on the mic, get around Todd Hartley and company again, get around the guys, get around the program. Georgia is definitely at or near the top for Mark Bowman as they battle Texas. I think, combining with Chad Simmons, we view them as the top 2, USC, Oregon, Alabama, some of the others in play. And then Tyler Atkinson, kind of similar to Jackson Cantwell. If this recruitment was happening 3-4 years ago, Georgia would be extremely tough to beat. Yeah. Talks to Glenn Schumann a ton. Tyler Atkinson was maybe the first prospect that Kirby Smart went and saw when coaches were on the road in the winter. And then Glenn Schumann came back. He was the last prospect. So they sandwiched it from a strategic standpoint first, and then last face we see when we're on the road from a defensive perspective is Tyler Atkinson. And the way that Georgia develops the linebacker position, the play style, the physicality, proximity, they got a lot going on in their recruitment there. And I think, I did a best guess article this morning on the On3 Network on the 5 stars and a couple other touted guys just outside the 5-star range. And I still put in a best guess for Georgia there. But they got their hands full. Oregon, Ohio State, certainly 2 other major contenders for Tyler Atkinson. Miami's in there, Clemson's in there, USC's in there, just to name a few others. And that one's going to go into official visit season. And Georgia's going to have to battle to keep him in state.
All right, Dog fans, what do you think? Is this a top 3 class or number 1 class? Heck, if they land the number 1 overall prospect, the number 1 quarterback, I think now we are looking at number 1 class. Dog fans, talk to us. Let us know what your expectations are for this cycle 2026. It's a big football weekend out in Eugene for the Oregon Ducks, which means it's also a big recruiting weekend as well. Some big names on campus, and that's what we're going to discuss in this video. We'll start with the first big name official visitor. It's Jackson Cantwell, the #1 overall prospect in America. And about a week ago, Steve, if you asked me, I thought Oregon was sitting in a position of power with this visit because he was going to be making that commitment 2 days after this official visit ended on Sunday. But that's no more. He's going to take an unofficial to Georgia now and make that announcement on May 13th. Do you feel like Oregon actually has some ground to make up during this official visit now?
Well, Jackson Cantwell told me last night he still doesn't know where he's going to go to school. So I think Oregon is one of the programs prominent in this process. Obviously, I have an on-3 RPM in for Georgia, but Oregon, Miami, and Ohio State, 3 programs still really battling. And his relationship with Dan Lanning, that's his best head coach relationship. This will be his second time visiting as a prospect. He'll get a chance to get his mom out there, get a chance to watch him practice. The spring game's going on, so there's going to be a really good environment inside Autzen Stadium. He's going to be around fans that will help add to the environment of the visit. And then certainly where Oregon's at as a program, the opportunities off the field for Oregon and what that represents. I wouldn't be surprised if we're really talking highly about Oregon's position coming out of the visit for Jackson Cantwell. He's going to take one more trip to Georgia. Dialogue remains with Miami and Ohio State. And he's got a lot to weigh before he makes his decision May 13th. I like where Georgia stands right now, but that doesn't mean that we'll like where Georgia stands in a few weeks when he makes his college decision. And Oregon has a chance to make a big move this weekend with another visit to campus with his family.
All right, another #1 player at his position is going to be in Eugene. We're talking about Brandon Arrington, the nation's #1 corner. And Arrington's recruitment, if you watch this channel, it has trended every which way. Almost every school he visits, at some point, it feels like they're going to be the one that lands him. So we know that visits are important to Brandon Arrington. He's very impressionable. He has a great time taking them. But Oregon this weekend, where do you think the Ducks stand with him?
Well, Brandon visits these programs that have great opportunities for him on and off the field. So it's no wonder that he visits Alabama, sees 2 starting corners from California, and has a great relationship with the staff. And it's why you're talking to him as he just left campus. He could really see himself at Alabama. Yeah. Or same with Texas A&M and Mike Elko and his history of coaching defensive backs. And USC is obviously going to continue pushing for him. And Georgia is in the mix. But I did that on 3 best guess story for 5 stars, and a few guys ranked just outside the top 5. And this morning I put Oregon, partly because USC is really loading up in the secondary, and I have them trending for another corner right now in Albert Hill IV. But I thought when Brandon Arrington visited Oregon earlier this calendar year, he left campus with the Ducks in pole position. And I feel like coming out of this spring game visit, Oregon's going to make another move for him, and he's going to feel at home. And I like the way that it's setting up for him, but he's going to take his official visits, and Oregon's going to have to battle. But he's a top target for Oregon regardless of position. I think it's going to be a really good visit this weekend. I still love where the Ducks stand with Davon Benjamin, who visited earlier this week. I have an on-3 RPM for Oregon for the #2 corner in the country as they battle Miami, Georgia, and USC for him. And then Brandon Arrington, I just think ultimately, and then combining intel with colleague Chad Simmons, West Coast schools, and then I give Oregon the edge right now in this process.
All right, let's talk about another top 5 player at his position that'll be on campus. Boobie Feaster, wide receiver from Texas, is going to be up in Eugene, and he's also been taking a couple visits this spring. He's got a hot recruitment. How do you see the Ducks fitting in this one?
Wiltfong Whiparound is sponsored by Game Time. Game Time is the hot ticket app for fans that are looking for those last-minute, hard-to-find, hard-to-get tickets. It's tournament season. Looking to be at the biggest games in March with friends or loved ones? Game Time has you covered. And Game Time is about maximizing value. So they're going to find you the best bang for your buck. In fact, right now on my Game Time app, I'm looking for Pacers tickets, an opportunity to see the best players in the NBA. And I'm finding tickets in club level for $23. And there's no hidden fees. Game Time Picks. Curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front which again, no surprise fees at checkout. You get your seat views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or game time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game time ticket coverage. Your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code ON3 ON3 for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Well, he visited Texas A&M for a third time this spring last weekend for the Aggie spring game and had another great time. Texas A&M is arrow up with Ethan Booby Feaster. LSU remains one of the front runners. That's where my on-3 RPM is, but they have stiff competition. Oregon, they're in the mix for a lot of these wideouts. Now, Feaster's also high on like Miami, USC, Tennessee, to name a few others. And then Oregon's just getting all the best receivers in the country on campus this spring. Feaster, another one where they'll look to move the needle. New receivers coach Ross Douglas is an excellent recruiter. Will Stein with all the Texas ties, that offense, it's exciting for any pass catcher to want to play. And so I think we'll see Oregon really raise the antenna of Feaster and his family this weekend with a visit for the spring game, but they got to make up some ground on some SEC programs right now.
All right, another priority target on campus we got to talk about is defensive lineman Richard Wesley. He's one of these reclassifications. He's from the state of California, 6'4", 250 pounds. He's a reclass. I mean, he should be entering his junior year. Instead, he's going to be entering his senior year. But we know Oregon's made him a priority. What's the chances the Ducks can land him?
Well, I think Oregon was the program to beat going into his reclassification and going into these spring visits. He'd been to Eugene for a couple times, loves it, loves the coaching staff, loves where this program is at and how they prioritize them and how they recruit them. So I still very much could see him in Oregon's class. Oregon has the number 3 class in the country. They're going to make a push for number 1. And I would probably peg them as the front runner in the Richard Wesley sweepstakes, but Texas A&M, USC, certainly there's sources that think USC and Oregon are the top 2, Ohio State and Tennessee, all programs that he has a keen eye on. But Oregon's always been well positioned, and I have a feeling he's going to get them warm and fuzzies again when he returns this weekend for the spring game.
All right, Oregon fans, big weekend. How are you guys feeling about Jackson Cantwell? Did this Georgia visit news change anything from you in terms of where you think he's going to end up? Let us know. Let's talk some Notre Dame recruiting. They have been on an absolute heater on the recruiting trail. And, Steve, I don't think they're slowing down because you dropped a new prediction for one of their top targets. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Notre Dame's got the number 5 class in the country. Marcus Freeman and his staff, they played their spring game last weekend, but the NCAA says they can still bring visitors on campus. So that's what they're doing. Top targets in South Bend, under touchdown Jesus, around the Golden Dome this week. And I like the way the Irish are trending for one of them. Sunshine State, 4-star defensive back, Aiden Pouncey returned for a second time this spring. I talked to him after his visit on Wednesday, and he highlighted not only what Notre Dame's doing on the field, developing defensive backs, but what they can do for you off the field, the relationships you can have, the connections that you get going to Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is the one to beat. I have the Irish trending on the on-3 RPM. He set his official visit to Notre Dame for June 13th. Florida, Syracuse, Miami, LSU, some of the other front runners in this recruitment, I think they're all chasing Notre Dame for Aiden Pouncey.
Really exciting recruitment. We were talking to Mike Singer on the Inside Scoop yesterday about him. Now let's talk about tight end recruiting, because for Notre Dame, it's going well again. They really do well at the position. So what's the latest on 2026 recruiting at the tight end position?
Well, this week they hosted another one of the nation's best, Matt Ludwig from Montana. Michigan is the on-3 RPM favorite for Matt Ludwig, but he has made some rounds to Texas A&M, Tennessee, Georgia, and now Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is a program to watch late in the process. I think they're a school that can give the Maize and Blue a run for their money. But Notre Dame, they're strongly in the mix for several tight ends. I have an on-3 RPM in favor of the Irish for another top 10 player at the position, Evan Jacobson out of the state of Iowa. Now, Texas A&M is the program that I view as the biggest challenger. He's been there several times. Auburn is firmly in the mix for him as well. Florida State, Wisconsin. He's got some official visits coming up. But Notre Dame certainly at the front or the forefront of his recruitment. Ian Premer, he's a top 25 player in the country for On3, a guy that's got a chance to finish with a 5th star. Talked to his family earlier in the week, and then Chad Simmons with the report today. Notre Dame is locked in for an official visit after a really good visit this spring. I think Notre Dame is one of the favorites there. You have Iowa State, Kansas State, and Michigan involved for Ian Premer, but Notre Dame, one of the top schools for him. Then you got Gavin Mueller from Illinois, the Jensen kid from Nebraska. Those are 5 touted tight ends that Notre Dame's in the mix for. The prediction is on Jacobson right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they landed any of those guys as they continue to push for what is a top 5 class right now.
All right. Well, Notre Dame fans want more intel, Steve. What do you got?
Well, Javian Osborne will announce his college decision in early May. He took trips to Notre Dame in Michigan, multiple trips to Notre Dame in Michigan this spring. And unless something changes or unless I'm reading it wrong, I like where the Irish stand for the Forney, Texas 4-star. Caden Finley is Notre Dame's top receiver on the board. He's maybe their top overall prospect for where they're trying to go as a program. Took a recent visit to Notre Dame. I have an on-3 RPM in favor of the Irish, but they got to hold off Texas. They got to hold off Texas A&M. He's going to visit Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils this weekend for the spring game. They're swinging hard. A lot of competition for Caden Finley and Notre Dame, but I like where Notre Dame is currently positioned for the talented pass catcher for the Lone Star State.
College football recruiting is heating up. There's some big decisions coming down the pike. And in this video, we got Steve Wiltfong, On3 national analyst, to give his best guess on where the nation's top 2026 football recruits will ultimately land. Steve, it's always fun to check in at different points of the year. So here we go. 5-star offensive tackle, Jackson Cantwell. What's your best guess?
Well, right now it's Georgia. The Bulldogs have been a program that's always been the front runner for him. I think that here later in the process, we saw Miami grab some momentum, and Oregon has been a mainstay amongst the top contenders, and Ohio State's been swinging. But as this recruitment winds down with a decision date of May 13th, an unofficial to Georgia scheduled for May 10th, the official visit to Georgia still in the back pocket for down the road. I like where the Bulldogs stand. He loves the way they develop offensive linemen, loves the way they compete for championships. His relationship with offensive line coach Stacey Searles is second to none. Miami, Oregon, Ohio State not going away, but my best guess right now is the Georgia Bulldogs.
All right, let's talk about another one of these fluid recruitments, and that's 5-star offensive tackle Emmanuel Iheanacho.
Yeah, this is one where the best guess could change with each visit, but right now I think it's Oregon that has the momentum. He named Oregon his leader in January at the Under Armour All-America game. They took that top spot from Georgia. Then we had a run where Maryland was sitting in pole position to keep him home, but he returned to Oregon a couple weeks ago. I think that visit really resonated with him, reminded him why the Ducks were number one with him at one point. Now Oregon's got to stay that way. He's going to take his official visits. You got Alabama, Auburn. He's been to A&M a couple times this calendar year. Had a great visit to LSU. Again, Maryland still involved. I at one point had my prediction on Zion Ely to Oregon. He is committed to Maryland. So don't sleep on Mike Loxley and the Terps, particularly this cycle with local recruits. But the best guess right now is Oregon for Manny Iheanacho.
Another 5-star offensive tackle, Felix Ojo out of the state of Texas. What's your best guess?
This year's spring transfer portal window is sponsored by Teamworks Intelligence. Their mission is simple: more hits, fewer misses, and player evaluation. In the transfer portal era, data-driven recruiting isn't just an advantage, It's essential. Teamwork's intelligence empowers your program to navigate the transfer portal with precision while simultaneously elevating your game planning and self-scouting capabilities. The same advanced analytics platform trusted by NFL teams to make multi-million dollar personnel decisions is now available to elevate your college program's evaluation process. For athletic directors, general managers, and coaching staffs, Teamworks Intelligence delivers game changing efficiency by streamlining the evaluation process. Instead of spending countless hours reviewing film and traveling to scout prospects, your team can assess more players with greater accuracy in less time. This means maximize recruiting efforts within new budget constraints, giving you the competitive edge needed to build championship caliber programs. Don't just survive the portal era, dominate it with Teamworks Intelligence, the new standard in player evaluation. Best guess right now is Texas, but Ohio State is certainly making me nervous on that best guess. The Buckeyes are right there with Texas. Had great visits to both campuses again this spring. Official visits are going to be huge. Florida, Ole Miss, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, some of the others in play for Felix Ojo.
All right, let's talk about the number one quarterback in America, Jared Curtis out of Nashville, Tennessee. What's your best guess on where Jared Curtis will end up?
Yeah, committing on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, Josh. I like where Georgia stands right now, but Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein going to make a couple visits to the Curtis household between now and that decision date. Oregon's offense, the success of the quarterbacks, the vibe and how he feels when he's out in Eugene. Oregon still very much in play for Jared Curtis, but proximity to home, Kirby Smart, the way Georgia recruits, the consistency of the program. I like where Georgia stands right now for Jared Curtis.
All right, give me your best guess on five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson.
I'm still with Georgia, but recognize that the competition is stiff from Ohio State, Oregon, and Auburn. Clemson, Miami also in play. USC got him on campus this spring. He's been to Georgia as much as any prospect in this class. What they've done with linebackers historically, relationship with Coach Schumann and Kirby Smart. I like Georgia, but there's a lot of competition to keep him at home.
All right, number one running back, Savion Hyder.
Michigan is my best guess right now, but a recent visit to Ohio State was a huge needle mover, has a great relationship with running backs coach Carlos Lachlan. The way the Buckeyes have churned out running backs from Ezekiel Elliott to this year with Travion Henderson and helping Quinshon Judkins with his development, those are things that have the Buckeyes very much near or at the top of the list. Had a great visit to Tennessee as well this spring. Georgia rounds out the top four. He's been to Athens multiple times. Official visits will be huge for Sitter, but he's Michigan's number one overall player on the board, regardless of position. They're recruiting him as such. They're going to get him back for an official visit. I believe it's the last trip of his process before he decides. So my best guess is still on Michigan, but they're going to have to battle.
All right. Five-star safety, the top safety in America, Braylon Womack.
My best guess is on Ohio State. He named the Buckeyes as leader following his visit to campus this spring. He certainly loves the way they've recruited, the guys he could potentially play with, the stage, and the way that Tim Walton, Ohio State, Coach Patricia, and everybody, what they've done historically in football all resonates with him. Now, Florida, Auburn, and Texas A&M, I view the Aggies as the biggest challenger right now, but all three of those programs have also given him a reason to be excited. But I'm with Ohio State right now for Braylon Womack.
All right. How about five-star corner, the number one cornerback in America, Brandon Arrington?
My best guess right now is Oregon. I think ultimately teaming up with colleague Chad Simmons, we give the West Coast programs the advantage. Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M heavily in the mix, but Oregon, USC pushing. He's going to be at Oregon spring game this weekend. He had a great visit to Oregon earlier this calendar year. I think he loves the program, loves the opportunity on and off the field. He's obviously one of the fastest sprinters in the country. I could give Oregon my best guess right now for Brandon Arrington, but these visits have been really impactful for him, and he's got several more coming up.
All right. Those are some expert picks from Steve Wiltfong. These are just early projections. Things can change. As we know with recruiting, official visit season is the summer. We're going to have a ton of commitments coming off the board, so we'll do this again. But Steve, I want to hear from the real recruiting experts. You guys in the comment section, chime in. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? How do you think Steve did on his picks? Let us know.